Well, hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Places We'll Go show with your hosts, Mark and myself, Richie. Now, today, I'm absolutely thrilled to introduce an esteemed guest, Professor Dan Ariely. Welcome, Dan.
Lovely to be here.
Now, look, Dan is really a guest that needs absolutely no introduction, but for just a few minutes, do humor me so I can give you a few of his key highlights. Now, Dan is a renowned behavioural economist and widely recognised for his groundbreaking contributions to our understanding of human decision-making and, of course, irrationality. He holds the James B. Duke Professorship of Psychology and Behavioural Economics at Duke University as well. Now, his work has been absolutely pivotal in unveiling the complex mechanisms behind our everyday choices. In fact, he's a 3 times New York Times best-selling author and just released a new book called Misbelief, which we're going to dive into shortly. He's a TED Talks favourite, with his presentations being amongst the most popular, amassing literally millions and millions of views. His research is not just academically acclaimed, it resonates with a wide audience, making the complex field of behavioural economics accessible and relatable. And finally, for all us marketers out there, Dan was actually induced into the Marketing Hall of Fame last year. So with that note, welcome, Dan, once again. It's an absolute pleasure to have you on.
Thank you. Lovely to be here. One new adventure that I have is that, I don't know if you know, but I helped write a drama TV show that is loosely based on my life. We managed to film 7 episodes before the writer's strike, and now we finished the first season, so it's on NBC, called The Irrational. And you will see that the guy who was playing my fictitious character also has some scars, and he's a professor and he solves crimes. Kind of a nice way to bring psychology and behavioral economics to another domain.
How cool. I mean, is there no limit to your talent, Stan?
Not so much talent, it's like a willingness to explore.
There you go. Well, they're linked. But I have to say, my guilty secret, I did economics as a degree back in the day. Rational economics, microeconomics, all these pretty multiple axes charts and so on. But I'm a convert. I fell into marketing 25 years ago, and I realized that consumers are beautifully irrational, and rationality sort of only gets you so far if it gets you anywhere. So anyway, that's my guilty secret. I feel better for that. I'm going to jump straight in with Misbelief. So new book, new adventures. Tell us a bit more about that. I mean, people will know the sense of it, but tell us a bit about what that reveals as new.
So all my books came after I did research. I had some research done. I felt I understood the topic, and maybe it was time to write something for more general, non-academic audience. This book was very different. COVID started early 2020, late 2019, and I got lots of requests from lots of people, companies, and governments. And of course, the problem was the virus, but the social science was incredibly important, right? What do we do with distant education and distant work and furlough? And how do we help people think about masks and surfaces? And just releasing prisoners, the question about domestic violence, all the underbelly of society all of a sudden came into focus in all kinds of ways. And I felt I was the most useful I've ever been. I felt like I was at the peak of my academic career. I was just helpful. I stopped doing my regular research. I was just helping. By the way, think about simple questions. Do penalties work? Right? Should we give rewards or give penalties? Big penalties, small penalties. Anyway, I keep on going, and I feel wonderful. I'm very sad for the world and so on, but I feel I'm doing my part. And then I get an email, and the email says, from somebody I once helped, and she says, Dan, what happened to you? How have you become that person? And I quickly respond, what person? And I get a long list of links describing how evil I am. And I can describe many of them, but I'll describe just one. In one of them, there's images of my early days in hospital, very badly burned, and it says that I was burned in about 70% of my body, which is true. Then it says that I spent about 3 years in hospital, also true. Then it says that because of that, I started hating healthy people, not true. And that's why I joined the cabal, Bill Gates, the Illuminati, to try and kill as many people as possible. And other videos with similar things. Different accusations, different discussions, and so on. People burning my books, all kinds of things. And my first instinct was to try and just talk to them. I said, look, how can somebody believe this nonsense about me? And they must be wrong. Let me just fix it. But so I tried to fix it and I failed miserably. I spent a month trying to convince people and it was terrible. It was terrible. During that time, it was very tough to work, to focus, to sleep, and so on. I also, around that time, started getting more death threats. In fact, I got death threats for about 2 years almost every day. And even recently, now we're in the beginning of 2024, just a short while ago, my university got such a frightening letter that they had to refer it to the authorities. Anyway, after trying to argue and fight and prove them wrong, I realized I'm not going to make a dent in this. But I also realized what an important topic this is. You know, we all hear about people with all kinds of beliefs. Oh, the immigrants are doing this, the World Bank is doing this, the earth is flat, all kinds of things like that. But when somebody comes to you and say, Richie, why did you yesterday was so abusive to your significant other? You say, I wasn't abusive. You say, oh, you were abusive. You say, I didn't even see them. I was out of touch. Say, no, you know, there's something incredible. By the way, I'm not saying you did, but there's something incredible when somebody is telling you, like, I'm an expert on me. And when somebody tells me that I've done something and there's nothing I can do to convince them, it's made it clear to me what the big topic is. And I'll just say that, you know, if we thought 10 years ago about what are the important topics for society, I don't think misbelief and misinformation would have been there. But I think now it is. And I think it's a topic that unless we make some progress on, we can't make progress on other topics. So I think it's a central issue. So anyway, I spent the next 2 years trying to understand this topic, and this book is an outcome of that. And it's a different book. I became more of an anthropologist. I use a lot of research from psychology because that's what I know and what I do, and that's my lens of viewing the world. So I interpret things in psychological terms, but a lot of it is observations, discussions. I had a lot of people from that world who helped me understand. They started suspicious, but eventually helped me understand their world. And at the end of the day, I think about this as a machine that takes people and put them down the funnel of misbelief. And, you know, we all have people in our lives that 5 years ago, we would have looked at them and say, you and I understand the world in the same way. And now we look at them and we say, how can it be? How can it be that you and I are looking at the same things in the world and interpret it in such a wrong way? And the simple interpretation is to say something must be broken within you if you're not getting things right. But one of the lessons from this book is that we shouldn't discount those people and we should discount those beliefs. What we should understand is that those beliefs fulfill a function. It's not healthy, it's not desirable, it's not the ideal choice, but they fulfill a function. And the important thing is to understand, why do people go down those paths? It's a sad path, but why do they have, what are the needs that they have that they need to look for those beliefs? What are the needs for this polarization? What is the need for the incredible hate that we see in social media? Look at what's happening at universities now, right? You would think that if there was any place in the world where people would be ready to have a discourse and a thoughtful, deep, complex discussion, it would be universities. Like, where else would it be? Instead, we see the opposite. We see not the most, but we see, anyway, all kinds of the opposite.
Yeah.
From what we would hope.
Dan, thank you for sharing that. I mean, I can only imagine the personal trauma that you must have faced going through this. And I wondered if
let me say something about this. There's a concept. There's a lot of times when going through a difficult experience is very helpful as researchers. And there's a concept called scarcity mindset. And scarcity mindset is usually used with poverty. And we usually think that people who are worried about their finances, some part of their mind is continuously occupied with money. Will I be able to pay my bill? How much money do I owe? Can I buy this tea? Can I take a bus ride? Can I buy this loaf of bread? And the notion is that you have your mind, and part of it is preoccupied all the time, and you can't put it away. And you can think of it also when you have an ailing parent or a family member that you can't put it aside. For me, this period demonstrated in such a way this concept of scarcity mindset. And the death threats in particular, I would get them, and it would just, I felt I was functioning at the lower level of intelligence, right? It felt there was this black hole that was sucking energy from me, and I couldn't put it away. Of course, at night, dreams and so on, but so there were all kinds of things that I really, very sadly, but got to have a much deeper appreciation for some of the psychological mechanisms.
Yeah. Dan, may I just ask, what are some of the coping mechanisms that you've been able to adopt, per se, to try and, like you say, go function, not optimally, perhaps, obviously, but just getting through the day? How have you been able to deal with that?
So I think there are two coping mechanisms. So first of all, I think that my coping mechanism was to write this book. You can think, okay, it's my therapy enough. You have to, somebody else gets no, but I think it is true. And one of the things this occurred to me only late in the process, is that the starting condition for conspiracies, for misbelief, is stress. It's, I don't understand the world. Why have I lost my job and other people don't? Why am I sick and other people don't? Why is this happening to me, and so on? And then people need a story with a villain. So that's how things are. When people are happy and not stressed, they don't develop misbeliefs. It starts with there's a deep need. And in some sense, I was like that. I was in this situation of stress. Where is it coming from? Why are you accusing me? I was just waking up every day, volunteering for everybody in the world who wanted help. Where would I get so I experienced the same thing that they were experiencing. Their solution was to come up with misbelief. My answer was also to come with the book. But my answer is, because of my training and the way I think, they were looking for a villain, and I was looking for an explanation in human nature, right? So I needed to understand what was going on in terms of human nature. So that was one of my mechanisms. The other mechanism, why is stress influencing people to such a degree? So of course, COVID had lots of things. Right? There was this strange virus, there was China, there was lockdowns, there were lots of fears. But our natural way to defend against stress is what is called resilience. And usually we think about resilience, we think about this. We go about our lives. We go. At some point something bad happens. Whoop, quality of life goes down. And we think of resilience is, do we bounce back? Do we bounce back above where we started, below where we started? How long it got us to get there, right? So that's what we think about resilience, is the bouncing back. But of course, resilience is not just the bouncing back. It's about how do we walk around life, and how confident are we that if something bad happened, somebody would help us. And the thing that protects us are basically friends, family, and love. And from that perspective, the world is not doing so well, right? So we have replaced a lot of our social interactions with online interactions. They're not the same, right? If you need somebody to drive 1,000 kilometers and pay £1,000 to bail you out of jail, spending more time with somebody on Facebook doesn't help. If you want to talk about deep exchanges, getting help, knowing that you can count on people, we do less and less of that. COVID, of course, was an all-time low. We couldn't do. So I think that my two mechanisms were to dive into this explanation, but instead of, I found my logic. That was one. And the second one is to rely very much on social network, in person. So I got to spend. I made an effort to spend more time in my close social circles.
Wow, listening to you, Dan, it's painful. It's a privilege to hear this, but it's tough. But your unique abilities to interpret this in a slightly different way, and I just love some of the insights. Stress is the start point for conspiracy, and resilience is about how we walk around life and how important friends, family, and love are. I mean, and you're a great storyteller, so I'm going to go all the way back. And obviously you had an extraordinary career, but it started with a terrible accident at graduation. And I don't know to the extent to which you talk about it, but can you talk a bit about how you turned that round into something productive?
Yeah. So, obviously, as you can see, I was badly burned. I have lots of scars. I spent almost 3 years in hospital. Very, very tough. Burns are very, very painful. They are painful when they happen. They are painful when they heal, because the nerves grow back, some of them. The treatments are very painful. And I got burned a long time ago. When I was in hospital, we didn't understand as much about addiction as we understand now. And we had lots of restrictions of how much morphine we could take. So not only is it very painful, but I think they under-medicated. Then, of course, there was a wave of lots of medication. Now, I think they're going now to under-medication as well in some cases. But, other people who got burned after me, some of them, they just put to sleep for a couple of months. Right? Because why would somebody need to go through this? Like, for example, my right hand is very bad, and when I got injured, it basically was swelling. All the liquids were and they had to drain it. And the only way to drain it was to take a knife and just cut slices through the hand and through each finger. And because I was in such a difficult state, they couldn't give me any anesthesia. Again, now anesthetics is better, but at that point, it would hurt the lungs and the heart functioning. So they were very worried about those things. So here I was being held down by a group of nurses, screaming, and they're just cutting through. Now, it's not like, it is a burn, so it's not the same as cutting through live tissue. It's a complex tissue. It's not like somebody would cut through your head right now, but still terrible. terrible memory. So lots of terrible things happened. I would say that in the beginning, I was basically what is called a pain person. Like, at some level of pain, nothing else exists. It captures almost 100% of our attention, and the only focus is, I just want this to go away. It took me quite some time to get out of that initial position, but when I got there, I started thinking about, what I liked, what I didn't like, what was working, what was not working. And when I started studying psychology, I realized that psychology gave me some of the tools to make things better. So I'll give you kind of an extreme example. So again, in the beginning, I wasn't really thinking about the future. I got no capacity to think about that. I just want this day to be over. I just want my next morphine. This was it. But let's say a year and a half, 2 years later, I started thinking whether it's worthwhile living. Is this a good? Is this good enough? And is it going to be good enough moving forward? By the way, my answer at the time was that I don't want to kill myself. Well, I thought about it like everybody does, but I decided against, obviously decided against it. But my thought was that if I had kids one day and they were injured the way I was injured, and there was a choice of whether to keep them alive or not, I would terminate. And I thought the same about myself. I said, if I was like, you put me back to the beginning of the injury, I would prefer not to live. And everybody has their own beliefs about life and death. I believe that death is neutral. So if life is negative, and it was very, very negative, I didn't see a reason to continue with it. If it started again, right? I felt like maybe the sunk cost fallacy. I already spent 2 years on this. I might as well continue. But the thought was that the amount of difficulty and pain was not worth it, and so on. It took many years until I thought that life is like, okay, so you go through life is great, get injured, life is terrible, slightly gets better. But, at what point does the negative offset the future positive? I was injured when I was 17 and a half, and it was only at age 50 where I basically said, I've crossed the point where it was worth it. But up to age 50, I thought that the goodness I have gotten did not offset the badness.
Dan,
But one thing. But if you think about this kind of very, very painful, difficult debate, right? Pain, life worth it or not? One of my big projects right now is to think about all the things we could do to improve the last chapter of people's lives. So think about the chapter between when somebody gets a terminal illness diagnosis and end of life. This chapter is slightly longer than 5 years in the Western world, because thanks to modern medicine, we prolong this chapter by a lot. And imagine, this is not possible, but imagine somebody gets diagnosed with terminal illness. They come to our care. The three of us are in charge, and we basically control that person's life. We make sure that they are fixing their relationship with their friends, and we find something joyful for them to do every day. and we find a purpose for life with them. And, we take care of them for that period. And then they die. And 10 minutes later, we wake them up. I know it's not possible, but we wake them up. And we say, look, you're granted to have one chapter of your life you can go back to. Can't repeat exactly, but you can pick one chapter of your life. Which chapter would you go to? Would you pick? And my question is, what percentage of people would pick that last chapter, given that we get to help them with it, right? They don't do it naturally. And when I talk to palliative care experts, they think the majority would pick it up, would pick that chapter. And why? Because that point of terminal illness diagnosis could be a terrible point, but it could also be incredibly liberating. It's a point where people can start focus on things that they've neglected all their lives. Again, fix relationships, find a meaning for life, focus on joy, focus on relationships, legacy, love. I'm not saying the last few weeks, nobody wants those, but when you think about a long chapter. Now, I think that my difficult, complex thoughts about life and death and where is it worth it and what is happening and what do we need to make it worthwhile is helping me a lot in this project. Anyway, so long answer.
Yeah, certainly. But I mean, it speaks to some of the key focal points that us in our everyday lives tend to forget about, how, the importance of things that you mentioned there.
Yeah.
And maybe we need to have that greater focus in not just at the end chapter in that sense.
That's right. It would have been great, right, if every 5 years we do a checkup. We do a checkup, but the odds are that it's a little tough to do.
Yeah.
One of my students here did a study in which she talked to many death doulas. You know this profession? So doulas are the standard doula profession are people who help bring life in. They go with the pregnant woman to the delivery room and they help them in the process. Death doulas help escort life out. It's a longer process. It's a few weeks. Sometimes it's a few weeks. And they help the family and the person, and they try to make sure that people are comfortable and they complete their missions and they say goodbye and even deal with some of the mechanics of that. By the way, very wonderful and important profession, right? Because most of us think that we're dying for the first time, that we don't have much experience, and they know how to do it better. But I'd ask them what is a good end of life? What is a good end of life? And they basically said some very simple thing. They said no pain, which, by the way, with modern medicine is possible. They said no loss in dignity of the body, which is interesting, sometimes harder to achieve, but interesting. They said feeling surrounded by love and having a feeling of a legacy. Now, when you think about it this way, it's quite achievable. Now, I'm not saying we can get people to be happy to depart, but I think there's so much improvement that we can make in this area.
Dan, may I pick up on just one of those words that you used? And so, we talked about the negative, positive, neutral position in your life and how long it took you to get back up the curve. I wonder to what extent you believe legacy has played a role in being able to get yourself back onto an even keel. Now, maybe you believe that you've been able to add sufficient value back to the world. Has that played a part in your psyche?
I think so. So, so I was injured in Israel, and there was one summer where I was in Israel for the summer, And the whole summer, I was running an Excel spreadsheet in my head about how much I owe the healthcare system. Like imagine I didn't create the physical Excel, but I said how many days in hospital and what is the cost for each day and how many surgeries I had and how many of them were less than 8 hours and more than 8 hours and how many days in the, respirated. And, I kept on refining the numbers and breaking it into categories. And I even got into, so when I was in the rehabilitation center, it was slightly cheaper. This, but I certainly had a feeling of a debt to society, and it's not just a financial debt, right? There's so many amazing people that have helped me, or nurses, surgeons, and so on. I recently went to meet all the nurses that treated me in the emergency department when I was just first in the burn department, and it was very touching, very, very touching. So I think there's a recognition of all the generosity and goodness and feeling that I need to return some of it. I think there's a sense of I took a lot of resources from the world. Yeah, and then I do think there's a sense of legacy. Yeah, I think it's important, and it's part of it is my kids, and part of it is my students, and I'm here in the lab, and I have everybody who's worked here in the lab has a little painting of them. We have an artist that we send a picture to everybody, and we have all of those pictures out there on the wall. These are people that works here with me in some capacity, and that it's part of the people I feel I've influenced.
That's a lovely touch. So many. We're talking about the big topics here, and thank you again for being so open about it and the learnings from it. But if we're talking about the big topics, one I really want to pick up on is around comparison, and I think this expression, comparison is the thief of happiness. I'm reminded of the Baz Luhrmann narrative in Sunscreen. Don't be jealous. Sometimes you're ahead, sometimes you're behind. The race is long, but in the end, it's only with yourself. It seems so obvious, but we all do it, especially when it comes to our careers and our success.
Yeah.
Why?
So, first of all, I should confess is that I am not sure where my personal defects are coming from, how many of them are from birth and how many are from the injury and in my different life. But I have never felt jealousy to anybody. I never felt hate to anybody. And I don't think I've even compared myself to anybody. Now, my guess is that this is an outcome of my injury, just because, my abilities are so different than other people. Like my hand, that's the only movement I have in my hand. It's not very easy to do my work. So, I like other people can type. I can't. I have these 3 fingers. So lots of things are very difficult for me. And because of that, I think I don't compare myself to other people. So I don't think that any of those comparative feelings are that strong with me, just because it doesn't feel relevant. But in terms of relativity, now let's talk about the principle. So there's a couple of interesting things. So imagine that you're a kid and you have a sibling, and your mother pours a little bit of juice, and they pour a little bit to you and a little bit to your brother or sister, and they pour a little bit more to them than to you. Now that's upsetting. Why are they getting more juice? Where is it coming from? And it turns out that we have a built-in mechanism where we care about fairness. And not only do we care about fairness, we want the other people around us to also care about fairness. Now, why is it? Why has nature given us this fairness mechanism that we care about it and we want other people to care about it? So imagine that you and I are going hunting. And we go hunting, and at some point we split. You go hunting one direction, I go hunting. What do I want? I want to know that you care about fairness. I want to know that if you will find something, let's say, let's not do hunting because let's be vegetarian. So let's say we're going to pick fruit. I want to know that if you found an apple, that you will not eat the whole apple. I want to know that there's something inside of you that says, I'm eating half an apple and I'm keeping the other half for my friend. In order to trust you, I need to know that you care about fairness. So what we have is we have this mechanism that we care about fairness and we want other people to care about fairness. And when we feel that other people are not fair, we punish them. But it's because we want a society where everybody feels fairness is important. By the way, of course, modern society is very, very tough. But if you think about primitive society, I want you to care about me the same way I care about you. I want you to be fair. I want me to be fair. Everybody benefits when that's the system, right? So a lot of this comes from really observing relative differences, right? So because we have these fairness detectors for ourselves and for others, and relativity comes with that. Now, of course, relativity has other reasons too. It's a simple computational mechanism. It helps us explain lots of things. For the joke: two people are camping in the woods, and they hear a bear. One of them says, "Let's run," and the other one says, "Let me put my sneakers first." And he says, "Do you think you can outrun the bear?" He says, "No, I think I can outrun you." A lot of things, even if you think about, conspicuous consumption and so on, are about relative things, right? So we talked about collaboration, and in collaboration, fairness and relativity are important. They're also important in competition. If I want to compete with you, I care about relative differences, right? So in a functional way. So let's say, two animals are competing for territory. It's not about the absolute level; it's about the relative.
Yep.
So relativity ends up being very important for all of those things. And of course, because we are, so imagine that the mind is a set of tools that have been developed evolutionary. So we have these tools, and they are designed to deal with different things, designed to deal with thirst and hunger and emotion and threat and all kinds of things, and fairness and so on. And now we live in a very different environment. But we still have those tools. Now, are they the perfect tools? No. But we kind of manage with them in the best way we can to deal with problems that the tools were not designed to deal with.
Yep.
So we still have all kinds of leftovers in how we think. But the problem gets worse. And the problem is that now we also have actors that can take advantage of our tools, right? So if our tools are not great, people can take advantage of us. And if we go back to the question of misbelief, fake news, and so on, now there are people there with all kinds of intentions, and they can hijack these primitive but very effective tools that are not designed for the current task. And they can hijack them and get us to start believing or doing all kinds of things that we wouldn't have done otherwise.
Thank you for that, Dan. I want to turn the page just a little bit into thinking about you're clearly mega accomplished in many of the things that you've done. And one of the key ingredients, I think, for anybody to have an active life and then a great level of success is the role of confidence. And I wonder how, given your past experiences and what you've been through, how you've been able to find a level of confidence to then be competitive and to really get out there in the world and smash it. And then of course, there's some in the, even more recently, as you've described earlier on, and that must have been knocking your confidence tremendously as well. And yet, again, resilience to get up again and stuff. I just wondered, what's your take on that? How do you do it?
Yeah. So one is I don't fully understand. I in the last few years, actually before COVID, there was a guy that got badly injured and asked for my help, and I get lots of those requests, and I try to help him, and eventually he couldn't take his injury and he committed suicide. And after that, I went on a journey to try and talk to people who had tough injuries and have been very successful to try to understand their source of resilience. And I edited a few podcast episodes with that. I can send you some of my lessons about this. So look, there's no question that it's tough. There were periods where I would get a ding in social media, and I didn't know if this was going to be another death threat. So there is this right conditioning that some things could be bad. But my philosophy in life is I think of karma. And I know there's lots of different versions, and this is probably not correct, but I'll give you my version. And my version of karma is that when we do good, we probabilistically promote good, and when we do bad, we probabilistically promote bad. But that nature of probabilistic means that we are responsible to what we produce, and then the world could take it and do something good with it, or the world could ignore it, or the world could even abuse it. But our responsibility is to produce it. It's from start to finish to produce something useful, and then it's not our job. So, for example, when we run an experiment, and the experiment did not show the results we were thinking they would, or hoping for, we've done our job. We have set the experiment, we let it run, we found the answer, not what we wanted, but that's the world is not the world we thought about. Or in COVID, there were lots of time, I spent lots of time on trying to promote particular ways to deal with this and failed. Still, I did my job. So the things that I think are helping me is, one is I have a very strong kind of this belief that my job is to make sure that my work is good. And then I bring it, and then if people don't take it, I'm disappointed. Like, I had this amazing program I created to try and fight domestic violence during COVID, right? You put lots of people in stressful situation, kids and so on. Eventually, for all kinds of reasons, mostly legal and privacy, it couldn't be adopted. Of course, I was disappointed. I thought I could improve, but I said, I did my best. I did my best. So that's the first one. And the second one is I love learning new things. So my excitement about learning new things has not diminished, right? So maybe shift a little bit, right? So I said, maybe I learned something about the TV world, or I learned something. But even like in this TV show, I fly to see how the TV show is being made. I'm not helpful in any way, but I get to sit with the director, with the producer. I get to sit with the actors. I get to see how the editing. I mean, it's just. I think there's so much to learn, and so I get. So I think it's these two components. I have an intrinsic joy from learning new things. That's very helpful, and there's lots of new things to learn, and I'm adventurous in that regard. And then the second thing is that I hold myself accountable to my standards of what I should be doing, and I try not to get the world to either reward me or punish me.
May I just add just one follow up on that? Because I often think that too, in terms of your take on karma, which often is, do your best, and that's where sort of it ends in that context. And if someone else adopts it or not is sort of moved on from your sphere of control. But when I think in in business decision making terms, right? I often think about our role as business leaders or influencers is almost to try and prove, if it was to prove a case of some sort, and then it's not adopted. You could either take the line of, well, it's sort of their problem, or you can take the line of, actually, I didn't do my job well enough to be able to create that level of influence to convince the people that it was the right thing to do. And I wondered if, I don't know how you straddle that sort of line of argument in your thought process.
Yeah. So what I said was that when I think that I've done the right job, right? So when I think I haven't done the right job, then I'm not satisfied, right? So if I think that I did not do my role correctly, then of course it's not the world's problem. But I also don't think of it as the world's problem. Like, I basically say, let's say I have something that I think is very useful, and I try to promote it, and it doesn't work out. Say it's probabilistic, right? I don't think that anybody has an evil intention. I don't think it's on purpose. We just need to keep on trying. It's the chances for any kind of big recommendation to be carried out is very low. Right? And what we need to do is we need to say it's a matter of trying a lot. Like, think about what do we say to people who are trying to apply for a job. We say, it's going to be a long time. You're going to get a lot of rejections. Don't think about acceptance or rejections. Focus on how good is your letter and how good is your resume. Try to every time see if you can improve something, and be ready to spend the next, 3 months sending 2 resumes a day. You're responsible for what you're sending. Improve it all the time. Try to figure out what you can do better. Try to figure out, and so on. But it's going to be a long-term struggle. It's not. Don't expect one resume to send and that you'll get a job. The same thing, we give it advice about dating and anything else. Even so I think it's not very different. I think we basically say, let's say we have an important topic. Let's say now that I'm in this world of misbelief, when I started writing this book, I was hoping for a chapter called Solutions. I don't have that chapter. I have lots of recommendations called Hopefully Helpful. But I also realized that this problem is bigger than what I thought, and more action is needed. And it actually needs to come from lots of places. Social media networks have to change, and regulation have to change, and the ways we treat each other has to change, and the social support in resilience. By the way, resilience also goes down as economic inequality increases, right? Because as economic inequality increases, we're less likely to ask people for help, even at the level of neighborhood. So you have all of those elements, and it's going to be a long, tough struggle. I think it can have lots of other ramifications. I think we might want to revisit freedom of speech. Freedom of speech, wonderful idea, has some cost we haven't considered. Should we think about it again? think the answer is yes. I'm not sure where we should end, but I think so. I look at this. I think this is a very big problem that needs lots of things to be fixed, and I'm working on it. But do I think that it will be resolved in my lifetime? No. Do I think we can make progress? Yes. Do I want to do my share to try and get people to care, understand the importance of it, and maybe start working towards solutions? Absolutely.
Well, Dan, that is, unfortunately, we're out of time. I mean, that is a great place to end. I'm just going to rewind a moment before doing a bit of a summary for everybody. But you talked about, you've done some work about why people were successful post-injury, and made the offer of sharing. I'd love to see that. As somebody who I've had the privilege of meeting, a chap called Henry Fraser, paralyzed from the neck down at the age of 17, and it triggered many, many positive things, and he's been an incredibly successful person, has no regrets. Currently in a musical in the West End of London, if anybody's interested, for the next few months. And that whole area of how some people just find it within themselves, which indeed you have done. So it's my slightly tall order to try and do a bit of a summary and put a bow on this for everybody. And frankly, the next question would have been about AI, but we are out of time, so we'll have to leave that one to imagination. But I mean, it has been a privilege, Dan, to hear you talk. I mean, we started about misbelief and the bounce from COVID being potentially your finest hour to being in the cruelest of situations with death threats, and how you couldn't fix it despite all your efforts. And I know some people will be in that situation where they feel helpless to fix things. But the way that you turn that into so many deep human insights is incredible. And we talked about the scarcity mindsets and how death threats diminished your intelligence. I mean, this is that fundamental, isn't it? The start is the stress point for conspiracy, but resilience is not only about bouncing back, but about walking through life, and how the role of friends, family, and love. And what a lovely expression, actually. Resilience is about walking through life. I remember, I think it was the film Spielberg saying about in having dyslexia at school, and being made to stand up and read, and it was a disaster. And he would say, I just found a way to dance between the raindrops. It's a very sort of familiar sense that you give there. And of course, very painful for you to experience and to hear, obviously not on the same level, but your experience around such severe burns. At some level of pain, nothing else exists. I mean, gulp. This is the big stuff. You talked about the last chapter of life and, finding liberation in that moment. What is a good end of life? It's achievable. These are deep insights into humanity. And I think, I've learned a lot, been tremendously inspired, and I'm sure many will. And then in terms of your legacy, to recognize the generosity that you've experienced. Comparison, we all care about fairness. We all want others to care about fairness. The juice to siblings example is brilliant because, of course, people can't help but compare. Hence, we observe relativity. And our mind is a set of tools to deal with things, but we've got the same tools, but it's a different world. That's the conundrum. But in the end, karma's there, and you believe, and you've got a joy and an adventure for learning new things. And in the end, we all need to remember that when things go wrong, it's not usually an evil intention. You just got to keep trying. And you're trying a lot, and you want to play your part. And whilst you don't have a chapter on solutions, more hopefully helpful things, I think a lot of the insights you provided can fix some of the bigger things that need to change in the world. So, Dan, it's been an absolute privilege. Thank you for giving your time out today.
Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you, and all the best.
Thank you, Dan.